Hello everyone, Zak-Z-Ninja here, and today I'll be showing you guys the differences between transmission upgrades, so the 6-speed, 10-speed transmission upgrades, and which ones you're going to want to put in your car, so whether you want the 10-speed or the 6-speed, because some cars will benefit more from having 10 gears and some will benefit more from having 6. And to give an example here, I've got this Mini, and the big thing about this Mini is it has a lot of torque. So as you can see on the side, it says it has 700 Newton meters, which is a lot more than it has power. So if it has way more torque than it has power, it'll have a similar graph to this. As you can see on the graph, the curve is very flat in comparison to some of these other engines that you can swap in, which make the curve a lot less flat and a lot steeper. Now I'll be comparing these later, but for now I'll show you the differences in the transmissions. So obviously the stock gearbox has 6 gears, and this is the 10-speed gearbox, and the other gearboxes have different amounts of gears. So the reason why this car benefits more from having the stock gearbox, which has 6 gears, in comparison to the one with 10 gears, is not just because of the weight. You can see the weight here. The weight will not be significant when upgrading cars with transmissions, so don't worry about that. The main thing that's going to affect your car is how many gears it has, not the weight that the gearbox adds. So I'm just going to go into a test in a drag race to show you the differences that this car has between 10 and 6 gears. So we're in the drag race, and as you can see, the car on the left is the one with 10 gears and the car on the right is the one with 6 gears. And you should be noticing that the car on the right is pulling away. The car on the left is kind of falling behind a bit, because as you can see on the right, every time I shift up, I go to about 4,000 RPM. And when that happens, I'm actually slowing the car down, and I'll show you why now. When the car's at 4,000, say this is 3, and that's 6. So 4 should be roughly here, about here, and that is where the peak power is. So every single time I shift up, I'm going up to peak power in the 10-speed gearbox. But that's not a good thing, because every time I go to peak power, I start revving more and losing power. And then I shift up, and then I'll start losing power again. So every time I shift up with a 10-speed, I lose power. However, with a 6-speed, when I rev up and shift, it'll go to about 3,500, something like that. And I'll start gaining a bit of power, and then I'll lose a little bit. But I'll have more power on average in between the gears, so in between 4th gear and 5th gear, I'll have more power overall than I will in the 10-speed gearbox. And on top of that, the 10-speed gearbox is shifting more, so you're wasting time shifting. However, that's not always the case. In these high revving engines like this one here, or this one, every time you shift up in the 10-speed, you'll lose a lot less of the revs, and then you'll start gaining. So whereas in this engine, the stock engine, you'll gain horsepower when you shift up, in these high revving engines with less torque, you lose horsepower when you shift up. So that means the more gears you have, the less horsepower you'll lose when you shift up. So therefore, if you have only 6, you'll lose a lot more horsepower than you'll lose when you have 10 gears. Therefore, engines like this, or cars with engines with not much torque, will benefit much more from having 10 gears than they will from having 6 gears. Now I could show you in a drag race that the car with 10 gears in this engine would be faster, but there's no point in doing that because it's obvious that's going to happen, and I've already tested it in the background and it does happen. But what I will show you is what it looks like on the telemetry when you shift like this. I'll just check what my gears are like. Alright, this is like the dead stock car. By the way, I did edit the gears to be more flat, so it will be similar to the 10-speed gearbox. So this is what I did to it, made the gears a lot more balanced. So as you can see here, we're in the telemetry, and when I go on the power, it looks like peak power again is about 4,000, I'll shift up and go into 4C a bit slower. So peak power is it's just under 4,000 actually. So when we go from 0, or from first gear, and I go on the revs, shift up to about 4.5, which is as high as this car goes. It goes up a bit in power, and then it starts dropping. So even with a 6-speed gearbox, shifting at 4,500 RPM is like a little late for this car. So with 10 gears, it's gonna put you into like much higher revs whenever you shift up, and you're going to be not even at peak. I mean, I know I said it earlier, but from the telemetry, as you can see here, it's a lot more accurate than just looking at the graph, so you got to make sure to do that as well. But the graph gives you a general idea, like it was about 4,000 peak power, but remember to always check the telemetry as well as looking at the graph to make sure that whenever you're shifting up, you're going up in power, then you get hit peak, then you're going down, and the peak should be in the middle of when you've shifted up and you're at the lowest revs to when you're shifting up again. So it should be in the middle of between just started a shift and just shifting again after you've shifted. So it should be like a hill where it goes up, then the peak power is at the top, then it goes down before and after you're shifting. But yeah, that's all I've got to say. Thank you for watching. If you liked it, please like, and I'll see you in the next video. Subscribe.